Just a quick note before we start today's episode. I want to give an enormous thank you to everyone who supported the podcast and still supports the podcast because you guys have given me an opportunity for a summer internship. That's right. Remember the mini series I did on the life and legacy of Emmett Till? Well, Mrs. Amberly Carter, a notable publisher and public speaker and close relative of the Till family, offered me a position to become a summer intern to explore the Emmett Till story for the purpose of social justice, media, and multimodal documentation. It is a 5-week program that runs through the collaborative group of the Chicago History Museum, the Till Institute, and Facing History. If you missed the story I posted to social media, I detailed how the selected interns will work closely with the Till family, with there being 2 groups of interns, one artistry and one media tracking. Words cannot explain how grateful I am. Obviously, when I started this podcast in 2023, there was really no telling how far I would have came. And I'm not saying in terms of statistics or how many plays I may get for a certain episode or just whatever the case may be when it comes down to numbers. This gave me not only hope, but this gave me a completely different sense of motivation to keep going with what's Bryce talking about now. Like I can tell you right now, the exact feeling that I felt when I got that message was just in complete awe. And I was so excited because that mini series was so passionate to me, really just for the fact that I explored through FBI reports, I explored through different books, different recorded interviews, just the whole 9 yards to make sure that I portrayed this story and I detailed this story and I told this story in such an accurate sense that it was able to serve as a very, very imperative learning lesson for anybody out there who wanted to explore Black history or just history in general. The podcast is working, man. It's working, whether it's in silence, whether people hear about it, whether, whatever the case may be. Thank you guys so much. And I appreciate each and every single one of you. So with that being said, we are going to be talking about having grace on yourself and others, and also the struggles of overthinking. This was something that I struggled with as a child, and it's something that I still struggle with today. So this may be one of those longer episodes, but I really do hope that you guys enjoy. And this is what we are talking about today. Episode 7, having grace on yourself and others, plus struggles with overthinking. Here we go. As I grew up, I always found myself nitpicking certain things about my character and just myself as a whole. Like whether it was the way that I articulated myself or the way that I looked or even the way that I was perceived by others, I failed to give grace to a kid that was already gifted and blessed in so many ways. Even just currently where I am dealing with certain insecurities and flaws about myself, I always kind of find myself in the same cycle and rut and thinking process of what would this look like to another person? Or what would this look like to my friends? And it hurts to really think like that. It really does, because I would say one of the biggest fears, even in really just one of the biggest problems when it comes to giving myself grace, is in social situations. I'm going to start with that. Even in social situations, I've always grown up as a very anxious kid or a very anxious child. I wouldn't take a lot of chances to meet new people, and I wouldn't take a lot of chances to be outgoing and super expressive to strangers. If I already knew you, and if I already have you as a friend, or if we're somebody who is close, then I would stick by you. I would stick with you. That was it. I wouldn't take a lot of chances to be like, hey, my name is Bryce, and what's your name and what do you do? And that wasn't that wasn't an option, man. It wasn't, because I was so afraid and I was so fearful that my approach wasn't gonna be enough to make a new friend. It wasn't gonna be enough to make a new confidant. It wasn't gonna be enough to get along with somebody else. I've already had to stick to the people that I've known for years, and we've already shared these common interests, and we've already done these things that I'm not giving this other person a chance, right? And it 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 really did kind of damage the way that I thought about myself, because I tended to kind of not really be in the the portion of overly expressing myself to the fullest extent and being myself to the fullest extent. I've always hidden that part, and I've always sort of acted sort of nervous, or not even just acted, but I was more so nervous and shy towards other people that I didn't know, because I was afraid to show my true self. I was afraid to show who Bryce really was, because because I was in so much fear of them saying this guy's kind of weird, or he kind of acts a certain way, or he talks like this, or he talks like that. That I'm not being fair to myself, and I'm not being fair to that person either. And this has transitioned even into high school, to where I have to mentally prepare myself for for certain conversations, even small talk conversations. Like, those are things that I mentally prepare myself for, because I'm so scared of the outcome of an awkward silence, or I'm so scared of it not being any substance to what we're talking about, that I'm just looking at you, you're just looking at me, and it's just awkward. And now I'm thinking to myself, well, this person's probably going to go home and be like, I never want to talk to this dude again. Or I never really want to have a conversation with this person again, because they're too awkward to speak to me. And I think about this even with my friendships, because I'm so scared of someone else's perception of me, that I end up sabotaging it for myself. I get this crazy heartbeat, and this crazy, like, just portion of anxiousness or anxiety, that I am not fair to myself within these conversations, and I don't give myself the opportunity to be who I am. Even days where um I've had classes with a lot of people, I was scared to speak up. I was scared to read, or popcorn reading. I was scared to do that, even though I wasn't a bad reader. I was actually a pretty good reader. I was scared to do that, because I was afraid that if I might stutter, or if I might stammer on a certain word, people were going to think that I was dumb, or people were going to think that I wasn't going to be able to read, or people were going to think a certain way about me, you know? Even even with having conversations with people who looked, a little bit intimidating, like, oh, well, do I have to speak with them a certain way? Do I have to change my voice? Do I have to stand a certain way? Do I have to sit a certain way? And it really messed with my perception of myself, because I've always hid that true portion of Bryce, because there were a lot of times where I've gotten called certain things. Like, some people made fun of my voice, or even just some people made fun of, how I dressed. And I would always kind of hesitate before I post, or I would always kind of hesitate before I put a certain outfit on. Oh, how do I look in this? Oh, do I look bad in this? Do these jeans look do these jeans look a little bit, baggier than usual? Or is somebody gonna come up to me and say something? I'm always second guessing myself. And even as I'm just sitting here doing this podcast, there are a lot of things that I find myself really just pointing out about my character, and I shame myself for it a lot. And I really struggle with that, you know? Um, and it sucks in today's world because there's a lot of negativity that clouds our society nowadays. I see a lot of people expressing themselves on social media and not getting a lot of good feedback. I see a lot of people expressing their music taste or their fashion taste or what games they play or what TV shows they watch. And there'll be some people saying, "Oh, well, you're a poser. Oh, well, you don't even really watch this for real. Oh, or you know, you're basic. Your taste in this is basic. Your taste in this is repetitive. It's not good. It's bland. It's trash." And I took that into my character. And I said to myself, what if this happens to me? What if I'm that person? And I failed to give myself grace for so many things, like even just with the little things. There was there have been a lot of TV shows and movies that I haven't watched yet, right? Even like a lot of popular stuff too. Like I'm not gonna name them, but there's a lot of popular stuff that I haven't watched. So there will be situations where I kind of hyperfixate on that, and I I overwhelm my mind by saying, "Oh, well, what if somebody asks you about this reference and you don't get it? Are you going to be labeled uncultured? Are you going to be labeled boring? Are you going to be labeled this? Are you going to be labeled that?" Like I grew up watching non-cable TV shows, right? I grew up watching PBS Kids, Cubo. Like I grew up watching that. So I didn't really have the opportunity to watch more mainstream, I guess, TV or more mainstream movies. So I was afraid of starting late because I didn't want people to find out that I wasn't experienced in that category or I wasn't experienced in that area, right? And not even really just that, but with a lot of things. Like even with music, there would be times where I would be scared to not have a good taste in music. Like somebody would come and be like, "Bro, what do you listen to?" "Oh, I'm listening to such and such." "Oh, that's a trash artist. You don't have no taste in music." "Oh yeah, you're bland." "Oh yeah, you're boring." Like there were so many things that I failed to appreciate about myself because I was so focused on the fear of what other people might say. And I still struggle with that now. Like even just going deeper into that portion of not giving myself grace for certain things, like I've struggled with a lot of insecurities in my life. Even with my hair and my appearance and just my body. Like I've lost weight ever since my childhood. I was a pretty chubby kid, and there were still times where I kind of look at myself in the mirror. I'm like, I don't really like how I look. And it sucks to say that. It sucks to say that, noting the progress that I've had over the years with my physical health and my physical condition. And I'm still at this point to where I'm still heavily dissatisfied with how I look. Even with even with other things about myself, like even just my face, like, oh, what if somebody thinks I'm ugly? Or what if somebody thinks I'm unattractive? Or what if somebody thinks I look a certain way? Right. And that was something that really did sort of plague my mind as I grew up. And really just kind of saying this to you guys, like I would never want anyone that listens to this podcast to be in the same predicament because it is not a fun process at all. It is not a good process. It is not a beneficial process. It's not a healthy process. Constantly shaming yourself for little flaws that make you human is going to only lead you down a spiral of self-sabotage. And that's something that I'm still trying to work with today, you know? Like there are days where I find myself comparing what I do to other people, and I'm setting the bar so high, and I'm having a bunch of these expectations go through the roof, and I'm not being realistic with myself. Or not even just realistic, I'm not embracing where I'm at right now. I'm not embracing where I'm at right now. And I don't want any of you guys to be in that same predicament, because it is such a hard and it's such a difficult area of your life to get out of, to the point where anything that you do or anything that you produce, if you are still stuck in that rut, there's going to be a possibility of you self-sabotaging that, and you underestimating that, so much so to the point where you don't produce something that could possibly be successful. And that could possibly be an amazing benefit for you. And just knowing who I am and still kind of learning that, even at 17 years old, it is a process. Like, I'm not perfect with anything. I'm human. You know, I'm not the best writer. I'm not the best podcaster. I'm not the best sports player. I love to give advice to people and I love to help my friends out, but I'm not the best at that either, right? There are going to be times where the advice that I give may be a little bit, you know, wonky. You know, it may be a little bit like kind of like bad, or it may not be the best fit for my friends. But learning to tell myself, you tried and you took that into consideration, that's all you can do, that's it right there, you know? And it is a very tough task, because I've always tried to hold myself to such a perfect standard that I will never achieve ever in my life. I've always tried to be the best this or the best that, or I always second guess doing something because I thought that someone else would shame me for it. You know, there were times where I thought about, even just now, like there were times where I thought about, oh yeah, it's the summer, but I don't want to go to the beach because if I take my shirt off, I might be afraid that someone might say something about my body. Or I don't want to go to a public speaking event because I'm afraid that if I stutter on a word, or if I get lost, or if I am not as cohesive as they may think, they might think a certain way about me, or they might portray me as something less than what I want. Or if I'm in a social situation and I'm awkward, that's going to be who I am for the rest of my life. And that is a terrible thing to go through, you know? And I get that it may be small. I get that some of the examples may be small, or some of them may be moderately effective, but this has been something that has been a very, very like a very big struggle for me, because there were a lot of times where I failed to kind of appreciate where I was at. And I failed to appreciate who Bryce is, you know? I always try to kind of appeal to a certain audience, or I always try to appeal to a certain group of people to seem more likable. But that shouldn't be the case. That shouldn't be the case. We have to appreciate where we are right now and still try to strive for more. But don't shame yourself for making a mistake, or don't shame yourself for making a flaw. You're human. You're going to mess up. You're going to take a certain misstep. Whether it's working out, whether it's starting a business, whether it's starting a podcast, you are going to mess up. Whether it's reading, whatever the case may be, you are going to mess up. But the worst thing that you could possibly do is compare your progress to someone else, because someone may be years ahead, but that doesn't mean that your progress is any worse. That doesn't mean that your progress is any less than. And I say that now, but trust and believe that is something I have to affirm to myself every day. Because once again, I am not the perfect person. I am not the perfect person. I am not, you know, someone who gets everything right, because trust me, I don't. And there are times where I stress myself out so much about that. And it's not like, usually this is a top, like, I sometimes I get emotional about this because it's like I don't like I just there are days where I don't want to overthink everything. There are days where I don't want to overthink everything. There are days where I don't want to, where I want to focus on mistakes that I made in the past and regret them now. Like, you see what I mean? Like, there are so many times where I've been called so many things, and I relay those messages back in my head. I'm like, why was I called that? What did I do to possibly be called that? But I can't fault these people for calling me that. I like those, that's their perception. I have to focus on who I think I am. If I constantly suppress myself, and I constantly hide myself from what I do or what I'm passionate about to appeal to a certain audience, I will never be Bryce. I will always be this half version. And this goes for anybody, you know? This goes for anybody. Like, never, ever, ever, ever be so harsh on yourself to the point where you think that you can never come back from it. And you have to, in order to come back from it, you have to suppress yourself in order to appeal to a certain audience. Like, never do that. And never try to put someone's perception of yourself before your own. And it's a message that my dad relays to me all the time. He replays it to me almost all the time. Before you love someone else, you have to love who you are. Because if you can't do that, then how are you gonna love that person? It's relatively impossible. If I can't appreciate who Bryce is, how am I gonna appreciate who this other person is? If I can't look at myself in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm glad you got to this progress, and I'm glad that you are at this point in your life, and I am proud of you, how am I going to say that to another person and mean it completely? And giving yourself grace and giving others grace is such an important thing, because I kind of look at those two situations in a mirror sense. Like, it's mirrored. Like, whenever I see my friends make a mistake, or whenever I see my friends make a flaw, they're coming to me and they're saying, Bryce, I messed up on this, or Bryce, I messed up on that, or Bryce, what do I do for this? I take it upon myself, not as an obligation, but as a blessing, to talk to these people and say, hey, here's what you do. And if you fail to do it, that's fine. It's okay. I'm not going to blame you. I'm not going to shame you for doing that. I'm not going to condemn you for making a human mistake, because I make the same thing. I'm not going to blame you for feeling insecure about yourself, because there are times where I feel the same way, you know? And it really does kind of hurt to hear, because it's kind of like you're talking to yourself again. Like, dang, I'm insecure about not feeling, strong, or I'm insecure about not feeling mentally tough, or I'm not insecure about feeling this way. And when you hear that from someone else, it hurts all over again. And whether it was me feeling insecure about my body, or whether it was insecure about how I was perceived through other people, because I've always wanted to be seen as a a strong and open-minded person, or someone who was a good friend, but when I got negative reception sometimes, it really did deteriorate my self-perception, and it really did hurt, you know? Um, and I was so afraid of being called that again that I tried my hardest. I tried my absolute hardest to stray away from that and become this perfect version. But I have to remind myself that I am going to mess up along the way. Giving others grace is something that is so important because we will want the same thing for ourselves. We wouldn't want someone constantly being down our backs and saying, "Why did you mess up on this? Why did you mess up on that? You didn't do good enough on this. You didn't do good enough on that." We would want a break at some times. We would want some relief along the way. We would want a friend. We would want a support system that is going to congratulate us for the progress that we made, whether it was slow, whether it was medium, or whether it was fast. We would want a support system that is going to appreciate where we are at and is going to encourage us to keep going. And we have to do that for ourselves before we ever do that for anybody else. I cannot stress that enough. I cannot. I seriously cannot stress that enough. And it's something that I'm still learning. Like even with the friend group that I have, I love my friend group. I cherish my friend group so much. And as jokingly as I am, and as humorous as I like to be, I will always hold that side of encouraging my friends to become the best version of themselves, but congratulating them for where they are at right now. Because I was once that kid that felt that way. I still am that kid. That felt so insecure about himself and felt so just down on himself that he was so afraid of the littlest opportunities, whether it was talking to a new person, whether it was meeting new people, whether it was speaking in front of a class, whether it was even just having your own opinion and expressing who you are. Those are things that sometimes I fear, right? And I cannot be that person that is going to turn around and shame my friends for feeling some way about the same thing. And just overthinking and constantly analyzing everything that you do and hyperfixating on everything that makes you human is going to do nothing but sabotage the process. And there are so many phrases that talk about forgetting the past and focusing on the future, but it's very hard to put that into how would I say this? It's very hard to put that into your life sometimes because you find yourself constantly overthinking about a mistake that you may have made, or you find yourself constantly wishing that you could have done something differently. But that's the thing, you can't. You can't do anything differently in the past. The only thing you can do right now is focus on what you're going to do today. Right now. And look at that as, I'm telling you, look at that as a blessing. Look at that as an opportunity to do more, as an opportunity to strive for more, as an opportunity to become the best version of yourself, but to also relax. You can chill. You can lay down. You can be like, you know what? I think I did pretty good today. You know? Now I'm not saying be lazy and just do absolutely nothing, but when you are constantly comparing yourself and you are constantly putting yourself next to someone else and the progress is constantly being compared and you will never be able to relax that way. You will never be able to look at yourself and be like, I did enough. Because you're looking at someone who has had a completely different journey. You're looking at someone who has had a completely different process, and you're taking it into your own life. You're internalizing it into your own life. And that will do nothing but sabotage the process. Whether it may be a job opportunity, a new social situation, or even just expressing yourself, don't be afraid to take that opportunity, man. Please don't. And you can't always internalize what someone is thinking about you, because it's different every single time. The one thing that I had to remind myself, and before we just kind of end off this episode, the one thing I had to remind myself when I focused on other people's perceptions was that a lot of people met me at different stages in my life. Some people met me when I was very, very kind of dismissive and very off-putting. Some people met me when I was my most happiest, or when I was most upbeat about where I was at. Some people met me when I was most angry, you know? And a lot of people are going to give you different answers if they ask you about me. A lot of people are going to give you different answers if they ask you about, if you ask them about someone else. When you wake up, when you eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, when you go places, when you go to sleep, when you do it all over again, you have been there. So only you can give the answer. No one else can. Only you can give the answer. And it's so important that it's something positive and it's something encouraging that you give yourself, If you constantly look at a situation with so much intense thought and so much intense, I guess, drama around it or anticipation around it, it's probably going to be the end result. And I'm not saying look at everything as just, it's whatever. There are some situations that are very important and that require a lot out of you. But when we figure out how to approach things with a more, I guess, relaxed way, or a relaxed manner, or a way of saying, you know what, even if I don't succeed at this, even if I don't have the best outcome, I can confidently say that I put my best foot forward, I tried my best, and I know who I am at the end of the day. This outcome, positive or negative, it does not define who I am as a person. That is one of the most biggest things that you could possibly learn. Because when you are in a situation where you can approach things without so much fear and so much intense anticipation and so much anxiety and so much high expectation, you begin to become more calm, and you begin to feel more, I would say, at peace and more comfortable within that situation, even though it's a very high stakes situation. Whether it's the state championship game, whether it's an executive job interview, or whether it's going to the beach and you're uncomfortable about your body, or whether it's, speaking in front of a crowd, or whether it's reading a book in front of someone. Whether it's a little situation, whether it's a big situation, if you approach it with, whether I mess up, whether I don't have the best outcome, I know who I am as a person, I'm going to try my hardest, win, lose, draw, I'm going to keep the process going. That's the best way to do it. As we wake up day by day with the grace of God, when we learn how to give ourselves grace for the mistakes that we make and for the flaws that we have as people, we begin to appreciate who we are even more. When we speak to people and when we hear their problems and they sound so similar to ours, we relate ourselves and we give grace to them as well. Because people that we meet and the people that we are familiar with, they have the same exact problems. They have the same exact issues. Even the people who seem the most confident, even the people who seem the most, maybe even arrogant, maybe even obnoxious, they deal with the same thing. And learning how to look at that person and say, you know what? You're a human and you're a person just like me. And I'm going to give you grace and I'm going to understand your situation and I'm not going to condemn you for it. That's the best way to do it. Learning how to love yourself and learning how to cherish everything that you provide and everything that you give to every single person and every single thing that you do. That's the best way to do it. Learning how to stop hyperfixating on every single flaw and every single up and coming situation with so much fear and so much anticipation and being so scared about the outcome and being so scared about how someone may view you and how someone may perceive you. That's the best way to do it. Learn to give yourself grace, learn to give others grace, and learn to stop overthinking so much. And I'm not just speaking to you. I'm speaking to myself as well. Thank you so much for another great episode. And once again, thank you for the opportunity for me to be myself and for me to speak as authentically as I can. Episode 7, giving yourself grace, giving others grace, plus the struggles of overthinking. Oh, also, by the way, thank you guys for being so supportive and bringing me to the point of being offered a summer internship for the Emmett Till Summer Academy. Once again, much, much love. You guys are amazing. You guys are great. And you guys are awesome. It's What's Bryce Talking About Now. And I'll see you in the next one.